Hey guys, so we are doing our color mixing tutorial today for the tea kettle demo, and I'll just be walking you through what I'm mixing, why I'm mixing it. I have sped this video up slightly. It's at 1.2 speed, so it's slightly increased, though I do move my palette knife quite fast, even at regular speed. So, color mixing is a journey we're going to go on. We're going to tackle different colors, main colors that we see in the reference. In this case, we're painting a warm light, so we're looking at as in a sunlight coming in. It's like a low sunlight in the evening, and it's a warm light. That means that the light facing surfaces it's striking are going to be warm. And what that means, practically speaking, is that when we mix the light facing surfaces, like I'm mixing now, we are going to be looking for warmer colors. So that means the counter, the top of the counter, the side of the counter, right, coming down where we have the greens, the yellow top, the light side of the yellow kettle, the yellow-green counter below, the warmth in the stove, and then the background wall is white, but we might want to push that into some cooler colors. However, it's going to get a lot of reflected light from the sunbeam coming through, kind of throw some oranges back there, so we're going to have a little interplay of color there. So if I'm mixing the counter and the kettle are kind of similar, right? The countertop here is going to be more neutral than the kettle. It's probably going to be a little bit cooler than the kettle. The kettle is probably going to be warmer. It's certainly going to be more chromatic, right? So we look at the color wheel. Let me just grab it here. We have our color wheel here. So the kettle is going to be into the yellow hue, right? And the countertop could lean into an orange or into a green, but it's not going to be as saturated. So in terms of the value, the chroma, and the hue, that's what we're defining every color as, right? The kettle is more saturated in chroma than the countertop. Right here, I'm just mixing different. This is probably a little bit of the kettle. There's nothing specific yet. It's sort of, okay, I know there's some yellows in here. It's the countertop that we're looking for a little bit maybe cooler, more neutral than the kettle. Then there's the stove. Then there's the green of the counter, like I said, going down. The counter going down is a warm green, so it's obviously its hue is going to be leaning green, or I always go the wrong way. Videos mirror me, green, yellow. And it's going to be very warm. So if I'm mixing warm colors, then I'm going to be using my warm primaries, such as cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, cadmium red, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue. Those are all my nice warm colors. Sticking with the warm colors when you're mixing your warmest surfaces helps to make sure that it makes it easier on you. If you go into magenta or alizarin crimson and lemon yellow, you're going to have a much colder orange in that case, right? But if you start with, say, cadmium yellow and cadmium orange, you're going to have a very warm, very hot combination. We're thinking heat, right? Here I'm mixing the stove and the stove itself, the oven, I should say the oven, not the stove. The oven below leans purple. In the shadows, in the lights, it's going to probably be a bit more brownish, though metal is usually pretty cool. It's usually darker than what you think, and it's never going to be a value like 2 unless it had a lot of reflectiveness on it. And usually what says metal is dark darks against light lights. So you want to be making sure that the oven itself stays in a value range that makes sense for what you're looking at, especially with the counter next to it. So Okay, so then we have our, I'm going to call it the background, the tiles behind the yellow kettle. So like I said, the sunbeam is coming through, which is like a yellow light, orangish yellow light of the sun coming through. It's bouncing right up the counter and it's throwing light into where it can reach first in the background. So you're going to have some oranges and some pinks into those tiles in the back. And the farther away you are from that light that's being reflected, you want to cool it down with some purples and some blues. So constantly trying to play up some complementary contrast, right? A color without its complement is dead. I think I've said that in another video. So just bearing that in mind as we mix here. Okay, we've also got this yellow, not yellow, sorry, it's like a wooden, I haven't painted it yet. I have not painted it yet. It's this wooden egg basket on the right side, so it's wood. So it's a warm wood. So how do I mix a warm wood? That would be yellow ochre, cadmium red, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. If I didn't put the ultramarine blue in, then the color is going to be quite chromatic. And even though wood can be chromatic, it's usually always got three primaries in it to make it neutral. Of course, there's exceptions, everything under certain light conditions, but wood ultimately is more neutral than we think it is, even when it's an orangey pine. You're only going to have a few moments of high chroma under any light condition, I would say. Okay, so now we are mixing the towel and the lights. So the towel and the light needs to be warmer than itself in the shadow. And this can be a tricky one to get warm without pushing it into too much cools because you need to rely on the chroma of other blues that can cool it down. So in this case here, I'm using yellow, or cadmium yellow and lemon yellow to bring it up into a high chroma green range because I need to maintain the chroma as I go into the lights there. I don't want to have a really neutral uh, green towel in the lights. I want to keep as high chroma as I can. And what that means is that I need to choose colors that are very close in the color wheel. So cadmium yellow and Caribbean turquoise. This one here, I'll have to get the name of it. I'm using a different, most of my tutorials I don't use this particular blue. I'll get the name for that and put it in the notes below. But that blue, that lighter, cooler blue that I have in my palette, mixed with the lemon yellow, is going to be your most vibrant green. Cad yellow will neutralize it just a tiny bit, but also warm it up. So that's, you're looking to kind of get those two colors that are very close in the color wheel, mix them together so you get a high chroma green for this towel, which, yeah, under a cooler light would be turning, more of a very cool blue, like Caribbean turquoise plus lemon yellow blue. But under this light requires a bit more of the cad yellow into it, keep it into the warmer tones. And then when I'm neutralizing it, um, looking for the blues, right? Where the cast shadow is falling over the towel. So looking to find a cool versus a warm. And I think, when we see this on the gray palette here, that's what we're looking for. All the colors are laid out. So for that towel color that you see in the middle of the greens and the blue, do those look warm to cool? Is the value right first, of course, but also is the temperature shift right as well? here we go. We are finally mixing the yellow colors for the kettle. So for the light facing side of the kettle, we're just going to have cadmium yellow. It's the warmest yellow, it's the most chromatic yellow, and that is also my object. So it's not that it's the exact yellow on the pot, it's that if I'm saying the teapot is the most chromatic yellow thing, then the most chromatic yellow thing on my palette is cadmium yellow. But that's under these light conditions. If you were painting a night scene and I said this little tiny light bulb is the most chromatic yellow, maybe it wouldn't exactly be the cadmium yellow out of the tube in that case. But here we have warmth, we have warm light, we have a bright teapot, so this is great. The shadows of the teapot are going to be leaning green and a little bit cooler. So maybe introducing some of the blues in and looking to cool down the yellow, but without, I mean, you can make this more dramatic. So you could push this into purples, and I think we see that as well right now. I'm grabbing some of my alizarin crimson or my magenta and seeing if I can find a purple that will make sense here. If I just put cad yellow against alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, purple plus white, it's not going to quite look right. It's not what I'm seeing in person when I'm there. I'm definitely seeing green, and then I'm seeing some of the stovetop, the blackness of the stovetop coming back up, reflecting some of the lights as well, and looking for purple. Even if I don't see purple, I am going to try to fit the complement of yellow in there. If I don't do it, I should. So a little complement of color can really make that sing, really bring the color alive. So I need like I said, cad yellow is the light facing plane. Then it's going to turn around. There's going to be a transition color. That's going to be cad yellow, but what? A little bit cooler, a little bit darker, and switching hue towards, say, maybe green or into the oranges. And then we go into the form shadow. So that's what we see here on the bottom line. So the bottom right of my palette, you're seeing the dark greens. That's the form shadow. And then walking to the transition, orange and green piles, to the light facing side, cad yellow, and then to perhaps even more lighter, the cad yellow plus white or a highlight. At this point, I just don't know exactly how light that's going to be. I have this on my palette, so I can reach for cad yellow plus white, right? So you see that line in the bottom, that's what that maps to. And cad yellow plus white will definitely be my highlight, but will it also be the light facing side of the kettle? I won't know until I start painting it and I see how much I can push the range of the kettle, how much is appropriate, how much I want to pop out in my painting. Now I'm painting some darks over here. So on the left side, I usually like to have a black, which could be ultramarine. It's all three primaries, so ultramarine blue plus cad red plus lemon yellow, depending on, you can see three. There's like black, and then there's a brown, and then there's a dark green. So all versions basically of my three primaries in different quantities, no white in them. Maybe I want a cooler dark, maybe I want a warmer dark, such as a brown, right? So normally I consider black a cooler dark, which means that it has more of the transparent colors. So ultramarine blue plus alizarin crimson or magenta plus lemon yellow will produce the coolest, darkest color you can get because they have more transparency in them. If you're using Caribbean turquoise, that as well would work. I don't have it in my palette right now. I'm using a different blue. And the more opaque colors you add in, like cad orange, cad yellow, cad red, the more it lightens and warms up. So you might have a brown, and that's a value 8 perhaps, right? Whereas your transparent colors will get you that the blacker color. Yeah. Okay, and that's it for color mixing. So we have all the colors now we need to begin. It's not every single color in the painting, but it's a very good place to start to be looking at. We have, the form shadow of the towel, the cast shadow on the towel, the light side of the towel, and we have this for all the main areas, the cupboards, the counter, the teapot, and a general color for the wall in the back, a few colors for the wood egg basket, and some darks mixed out for the stove. So with all that, we are now in a very good position, a confident position to paint. And I think that's what this is about, right? You don't need to premix colors, of course, and you don't need to premix this much. But especially if you're, just starting out or you're not 100% sure about the colors you're going to choose, by premixing, this really ensures us that we have a lot of big juicy paint piles to go into without trying to use more medium in our brush to mix colors, because I can never get the pile big enough when I'm mixing with my brush without adding a lot of medium to it and making it thin. And it just gives us a nice starting point, we feel confident going in. A clean palette is a clean mind is a clean painting, and it can feel very organized to begin with such a nice layout. So, all right, well, we'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next video where we finally start painting. Bye.